Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Don Lemon Show. I hope you're having a fantastic 4th of July weekend. We are working on this 4th of July weekend, and you can see us. We're working, and Richard is working so hard. He's in his car on his way between jobs and between barbecues or whatever he's doing. That is Richard Greene you're seeing at the bottom. Because he's in a car, I figured I had to introduce him first. He is a Democratic strategist, a political communication strategist, and a civics educator, and also a lawyer. And then we have the very smart and talented and really accomplished Andrea Katz. She is an associate professor of law at Washington University School of Law in St. Louis, or in my old hometown, as they call it, basically they call it Wash U there. She teaches and writes about constitutional law with a specific focus on presidential power. She has more accomplishments beyond that: the Harvard Law Review Forum, the Texas Law Review, the Columbia Law Review. Her work has appeared in all of those. Did I get it right, Andrea?
Nailed it. Thank you.
I nailed it. Okay.
Very flattering.
Okay. So thank you all. Listen, I really appreciate you joining us. We are in unprecedented times. As Andrea and I were talking before we started recording this, before the camera started rolling, is that we don't know what to think. Andrea, do we know what to think? Even in history, have we ever had anything quite like this?
No, I was saying, I think the closest, like I work on the history of the presidency. I don't think there's been an election like this. I think even before the debate, these were two of the most flawed candidates we've ever had in history. I think, again, I want to go on the record. I think Biden has been quite a solid president, but he's old. And now, with the calls to step down and everything, it's totally unprecedented. I think the closest parallel we've got is Lyndon Johnson, on his own volition, stepping down in, I think it was March 1968, but very different circumstances. He was actually, really busy in, conducting the war, didn't want to spend time campaigning, realized that the issue was splitting his party, and just, he said, in one of his biographies, he said, "I want out of this cage." Okay, Biden doesn't want out of the cage. So it's really apples and oranges, I think. And after Johnson steps down, the Democratic Party is in total chaos for the rest of the summer. So.
Yeah, but so Biden doesn't want out of his cage. But I mean, do you think it's the right thing to do? I don't know, if you want to answer that question for him, it's only up to him. But it doesn't seem like he has the momentum, and he doesn't really have the support of his party, Andrea.
I think this is more a question for Richard. I mean, I'm happy to take a stab. I feel like in this election cycle, we all have the collective memory of a goldfish. Initially I thought this is going to come and go. I've written before about how the presidency is not one man. We have all this sort of, kind of mythos about the buck stops here and everything like that. I think Biden is completely capable of doing the job. I honestly do. But I think if the narrative doesn't go away that he's too old, then yeah, I mean.
Yeah. Richard, Andrea said it, you're probably better at answering that question, but where do we go from here? And, and all the question with all the things.
Right. First of all, I want to agree with Andrea. I think Joe Biden has been a spectacular president, shockingly progressive, shockingly productive in a very, very tough town, tough environment. He's accomplished so much, but he has one job, right? He saved America from Donald Trump 4 years ago, and that is his number one job. Is he the guy who can prevent Donald Trump and Project 2025 from fundamentally changing our system of government and life in our country? And I think the jury is out. I mean, I think you can look at every possible criterion about Biden versus Trump and versus blah, blah. There is one thing that the Democratic Party needs to focus on and to be relentless about it, and that is who stands the best chance of beating Donald Trump. And I just saw something today saying that by a pretty wide margin, Michelle Obama would be the leading candidate, but she has been adamant that she's not doing that. So we're left with people where it's really kind of within the margin of error.
Kind of within the margin of error. That's a little scary.
For the next 4 months and 2 days, we're going to be on a knife's edge.
Does an interview with George Stephanopoulos or anyone help? Does it save anything? Does it save Joe Biden? Does it matter?
Listen, I think every single time he comes across as knowing what's going on, being in control, being commander-in-chiefy, being presidential, and not screwing up and looking 95, I think it's a win. Is it too little, too late? Listen, we can't unsee what we all saw last Thursday night. But yes, he can make progress towards restoring the faith that he can do the job. And I'm convinced he can do the job. The analogy I would give, and I was telling a friend about this, is he is the elder, right? He's the elder in the middle of a council of elders that are leading this tribe called the United States of America. His experience is extraordinarily useful and valuable. And I think we undermine and undervalue the benefit of wisdom. And that's one of the reasons Joe Biden has been so successful. But the key thing that a lead elder of the tribe has to do is to pick good people around him. And on that metric, the difference between the people that Joe Biden will use his pen to appoint to be in his cabinet and to run agencies is night and day compared to Donald Trump. And I just wrote an article on Substack saying we are not electing one man. We're electing an entire team. And I see Andrea not okay. So this little civics lesson is critical, and therefore it reduces, in my opinion, sorry for going on so long, Don, it reduces the critical nature of him being perfect on every media appointment, as long as people understand what the real role of a president is.
Richard, I understand that. Trust me, I do. And I said the same thing.
You do.
I do.
The country doesn't.
But that's not the question. That is not the question. The question is, can he run? The question is, let's forget the president, right? Let's forget doing the job. We know he can do it. He's doing the job, okay? We know he has a team around him, right? Of very capable people. That is not the point 4 or 5 months out. The point is, can he win? Can he stand up in a debate? Can he challenge Donald Trump on the facts in a debate? There's another debate coming up. Can he do a speech without a teleprompter, right? Can he win as a candidate? We're talking about Joe Biden, the candidate, not Joe Biden, the president, which, as we have all said, you've agreed with it. Andrea has mentioned it. He has done a perfectly fine job as president. He's actually done a really great job as president. But that's not the point. The point is, can he beat Donald Trump? Do you want to respond to that, Andrea? Do you want to jump in?
I'd love to hear what Richard has to say.
Yeah. Like sitting in my Tesla in 98-degree temperature in Los Angeles. I'm really going to have that answer. No one has that answer.
You should have pulled over at a supercharger, and that way you could have gotten 2 things done at once. But go on.
I've got 180 miles left. I'm fine. But thank you for caring about my range anxiety, Don. I really appreciate it.
I know. It's a real thing. I do. I have it too. When I rent electric cars, and I'm often like, oh my gosh, I got 14% left. I'm okay, but go on.
But can I publicly thank Joe Biden and the Inflation Reduction Act for giving me a $7,500 tax credit?
Yes, but you have to answer my question, Richard, because again, as I say, at this point, I understand that is what the team around him will run on. That's what he will run on. But is he perfect? Is he capable of winning and doing the job as a candidate, not the job as president?
So honestly, Don, and I'm not copping out here, we don't know. We have to look at the polling. But I would give the caveat: if people understood civics and they understood that we're not electing a reality show, game show, competition star who's going to be the best on debating and the best on the perfect soundbite at the perfect moment, then we're screwed. if that's what our focus is. But if we grow up as a country and we realize that we have two imperfect human beings, but they're going to do two completely different jobs for the United States of America, and we focus on civics and what this job really is, I think he can easily win.
If you can't answer the question, then that's the answer, don't you think?
Oh, well, how
And
would
no
I
one-
know? I'm not a psychic. Psychic wasn't part of my
But
bio,
you
John.
teach civics. You're a political communications strategist. Richard, you're a political communications strategist.
Yes.
It's in the
And that's-
title. I'm asking you a question that is perfectly within your purview. I'm not jumping down your throat, but I'm just saying, if you cannot answer the question in the affirmative, isn't that the answer to your question? Because
So
the whole idea now is doubt. Everyone has doubt after the performance. That's all I'm asking.
And I was
does
one
that
of the
mean he
first
can't
people.
win?
I was one of the first people to express that doubt on your show right after the debate Thursday night. Ben Glebe and Abe Gerko and I were saying, this is really bad. We have to have a serious conversation about whether he needs to drop out. If the polling, that's why we do polling, Don. If the polling shows that he can't win, then he needs to leave. If the polling shows that he can, or roughly equal to everybody else, except for Michelle Obama, then I would suggest that he stay in.
Mm-hmm.
We're never going to know.
Okay. Andrea, did you want to weigh in? Or I can ask you a question if you want to weigh in on this.
Yeah, no, what do the polls show? I'm kind of wondering. I read something kind of scary today about like 538. I think said it was like, that Trump had a 2-to-1 chance of winning at this point. But then I read something else that was like Biden sustained a 2% drop in popularity after the debate, and I'm like, no.
Let me read some of it to you. Okay, so then there was a CNN poll that this was yesterday. Trump leads Biden by 49 to 43%, 6 points. That's a couple of points drop. Trump leads Harris by 47 to 45%. That's only 2 points within the margin. Harris is closer to Trump than any other national Democrat. There are other key findings among Democrats. Trump leads Biden 44 to 34%, a whopping 10 points. Those polls were not that wide before. And let's see. The poll found that, so there was a memo that was put together after the debate by Open Labs. It was a polling memo, a progressive nonprofit that conducts polling and message testing for a constellation of Democratic groups. Here are the facts. Poll found that 40% of the Biden voters in 2020 that were surveyed now believe the president should end his campaign, Andrea. It is a tipping point. In the tipping point state of Pennsylvania, Biden now trails by 7 points compared to 5 points before the debate. He has also dropped in Michigan, where he now trails Trump by 7 points. And then there are other things. There's Nevada, there's Arizona, there's Georgia, and so on. And then there's also a St. Anselm College poll released on Monday showing that Trump suddenly winning the Granite State. That's what the polling is showing, Andrea.
Not great. I've got two questions, I think, about these numbers. One, so I do presidential history. I don't work on elections. It's a lot easier to talk about things 100 years in the past. But who's a recent candidate that has had a reputation narrative built up around them and has been able to shake it?
Well, Joe Biden, for one, has had, he's been down so many times, and then, he's the comeback kid. I don't know if he's in that position now, right? Yeah. Donald Trump has had all kinds of narratives, right? Much of which he's helped to shape. Right. And then the polls say one thing and then he wins. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. So I don't know. I've got this feeling like we're in this world where these things just really come and go, just headlines are very fleeting. And I think that before all this stuff on the debate, I think the Biden team was doing a great job hammering home the narratives of abortion rights and Trump's sort of proto-dictatorial statements, And I think if and when the campaign can get back to hammering home these themes, it's not so much Biden's strength so much as Trump's obvious weaknesses, So I think, can the narrative flip back to what it was before?
Let me append my comment. I agree with Andrea. I think that Joe Biden has like a 6-week window. And if he can't sell himself to the Democratic Party and the country before the convention starts, he needs to leave. If he can, then I think he can stay. So he's basically auditioning for the job of Democratic nominee for the next 6 weeks. And
6 weeks? Are you kidding me?
Well, that's when the convention is. If he commits one more super embarrassing meltdown moment, then I think it's over.
You think if he has 6 weeks and if they do something different, if they decide to go in a different way for the convention, you think that is enough time for Democrats to sort of figure out who the candidate is going to be, to get all the delegates and all the states? And I mean, in some places, the names, the ballots will already be printed. I mean, wow.
No. You're old enough to remember when conventions, you were young then, but when conventions were these exciting things where it all happened in the last minute.
Of course.
We just, we do not have a Democratic nominee until a particular nominee achieves the certain number of delegate votes that is required to become the nominee. Okay. Everything that happens between now and then is potentially up in the air. But the point is, I would not bet a lot of money that there's not going to be some reinforcing meltdown in the next 6 weeks. And I think that's the biggest risk to Joe Biden.
So you said you would not bet there isn't going to be some reinforcing meltdown. Okay, so here's my question.
I think it's better than 50-50 that we will have a different candidate than Joe Biden.
Okay. You don't think it's going to be Joe Biden?
I would say it's probably 55-45 that it's going to be somebody else.
Who is that somebody else?
Well, the thing is, it's likely to be Kamala because of the deep emotional connection that Democratic delegates have for her, especially people of color and especially women of color. And if there was a poll right now, I think Kamala would win. Okay.
Take off all of those things I said about Richard at the beginning of this show, I take back. I want you to take off all of those accomplishments, all of those degrees, all of those accolades, whatever, and you are, Richard Greene from wherever you are, and you are an everyday American. I'm not saying that you're not, but you don't know all of those things that you're saying. You don't have to say it because you're a political strategist, because you have any certain political leaning that everybody's watching. Tell me how you really feel.
I'm scared shitless. How's that? I'm scared because the difference between going in one direction or the other in this election on November 5th will mean the future for my daughter and everyone in my family, everyone I love, and the country that I love. That's how important this election is. And I am scared. I'm not angry, but I'm scared that it all may be on the shoulders of an 81-year-old man who will be 86 at the end of his second term, who had the kind of performance that he had Thursday night. But I'm more scared that the other guy who lied, 35 times, and is literally going to usher in a fascist overthrow of the American democracy, that he is just inches away from winning this election. And I think it all ultimately comes down to transactional understandings of civics. Do you want to live in a country where women have reproductive rights in every state? If so, A, you have to vote, and B, you have to vote for Joe Biden and every Democrat running for Senate and the House. If you want a national abortion ban, you got to vote for Donald Trump and get out there and vote for Republicans. I mean, it's all on the line right now.
Okay, you said vote for Republicans?
That's just one issue.
Was that, did you say you have to get out there and vote?
If you, again, I'm trying to be nonpartisan here. If you want a national abortion ban.
Okay, got it. Okay, I misunderstood what you were saying. I get it. So, Andrea, I'm going to ask you what I asked Monique Presley on Wednesday. And I said, then, because Sue's saying very similar things to what Richard is saying, then why not focus on who can win? Those things are all good. Look, I understand that. I'm just trying to be direct and to the point here. Just on who can win. Why be scared? Right?
That's the question.
Yeah. Why be scared? Why not just focus on who can win?
Well, I mean, I'm just nodding along with Richard. I think I've agreed with everything he said. I mean, I think be scared because again, this is not Tweedledee versus Tweedledum. Trump was scary in 2016, scary in 2020. Now he has driven out the moderates who would presumably be kind of a restraining force in his cabinet. He's come back with a plan. He's convinced a lot of the base to talk like him, a lot of Congress people to lie like him. I mean, he has really changed the Republican Party, and dramatically for the worse. So like beyond 2024, I really worry about what's going on with our two-party system. But who can win? Back to the kind of Pollyanna thing. I mean, I think Trump is the single most flawed presidential candidate in American history. He has this kind of magical Pied Piper thing. But like, let's focus on the baggage. Let's focus on, what a shitty job he did with COVID-19. Let's focus on the convictions, the fact that everybody left his administration and wrote a tell-all book about how incompetent he was. You know what I mean? Let's bring Cassidy Hutchinson out, So I mean, I think how to win, the election's about Trump. The election's not about Biden, the man, and his charisma. This isn't like JFK falling in love again. This is about scaring people about what could happen. And so, I think Democrats just have to act like a team. It's not about their guy. It's about the other guy.
Richard, I hope the cops aren't coming to get you. So, listen, on top of
they heard I was on with you, Don. They heard I was on with you.
They're like, we better get this guy before he says something that gets us all in trouble. Andrea, on top of all of that, you have got what the Supreme Court did earlier in the week, and that's the whole case. That's the whole immunity ruling, which really throws another element on top of this, because all of those things that you're pointing to and that Richard is pointing to, they may not matter in the whole scheme of things, because he may not face any sort of prosecution for it. There may not be, he just may get away with it, right? Especially if he becomes president. But if it is ruled that he did all of those things, including the, inciting an insurrection, trying to overturn an election in Georgia, all of it, that he may be immune from prosecution. And so none of it matters.
Yeah, I mean, the Supreme Court, I think, has done everything they possibly could since March with the Colorado insurrection, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment ruling, where they said Trump had to stay on the ballot, even though, by a lot of pretty solid legal tests, what he did amounted to an insurrection. I think they've done everything they could, delaying the January 6th prosecution, introducing these questions about what actions a president is immune with regard to, right? Because I mean, one of the things that the immunity decision that came down Monday did that was so frustrating. This is a court that is maximalist. They like to have opinions on many things. They like to set down multi-factor tests. What they did essentially was kick it back to the district court and say, now begin again, and start sorting Trump's actions into the unofficial pile, which he could face charges for, and the official pile, which he can't. So just a huge, massive delay. I think they've done, in a sense, everything they could to make sure that the only checks Trump faces, at least this year, are at the ballot box, which is terrible. I mean, our system has impeachment, which has basically been neutralized. The founders clearly thought about criminal liability for presidents who broke the law. And so again, SCOTUS is sort of helping him put up these barricades, and it's just going to be the polls,
Yeah. Richard, we haven't spoken, right, since no, because I was away on my honeymoon, by the way. But do we have a king now? Do we have a monarch?
I think I am so concerned about that. I think the overturning of Chevron together with the immunity
Chevron
case,
deference.
Yeah, which Andrea, maybe you want to explain your interpretation on that. but we are concentrating power exactly how fascists have historically concentrated power. And the immunity situation that just came out, is just another step in the direction of, and this sounds hyperbolic, and I can't believe I'm saying it, towards irrevocably moving towards a Christian nationalist fascist state. And with Project 2025, I mean, I don't think we ever in history have been given a blueprint to what an opposition party is going to do if it takes over the government. And we're so close to having that happen. And I think for the next 4 months and 2 days, the Democrats' #1 job in order to defeat Donald Trump and keep democracy as we have grown up with it is to educate people about what the game plan really is for this other side. What is, Project 2025? How is it going to affect you? What happens, for example? So I'm a lawyer, and I understand, for example, that the Attorney General of the United States is incredibly important, just like the district attorney in your county or the Attorney General of the state. And Donald Trump, 99.9%, is going to appoint an Attorney General who would only do what he wants him to do. Prosecute Liz Cheney, prosecute Nancy Pelosi, prosecute Joe Biden. And there are no checks and balances against a rogue president, a rogue attorney general, and a rogue Department of Justice who could say to the Supreme Court, no, we're going to interpret it this way. We don't agree with what you just said.
Yeah. But can he prosecute Joe Biden? Because all Joe Biden has to do now is say, I did it in my official capacity as president. And couldn't Joe Biden now say, you know what, you need to arrest Donald Trump because he is a menace to the democracy, and he is undemocratic, and he tried to do whatever it is, and then have him arrested? And couldn't he get away with it, according to the Supreme Court, because he's doing it in the official capacity as president? Andrea?
Yeah, I think the scary scenario you laid out is exactly what
Well, should he do it?
Right. I don't think Biden tears down the house of cards first. That's why
it's not his vibe.
It's no, exactly. He's been defending this, right? Trump is the one who's kind of announcing his intentions. When people tell you who they are, believe them, But yeah, I agree with you that the ruling, as I read it, does presumably allow for that preposterous scenario.
I hate to both sides this, but what do you think conservatives or MAGAs, because they are similar but not the same, what do you think they would have done if they had said, hey, Bill Clinton, nope, nothing. He is immune from prosecution. He's immune from immunity. I mean, from impeachment. And there's nothing that you can do. What do you think? How do you think they would have reacted, Richard? Or would react?
I'm not completely scared about that aspect of the Supreme Court ruling, because ultimately it comes down to the judge or the jury to determine whether it was an official act or not. And I think there's going to be some sanity as a result of that. No, I do.
But Richard, were you part of the group? Didn't you tell me and you and others say, there's no way the Supreme Court is going to do this? I think that point is moot. It's never going to happen.
But there was a qualification.
Did you answer?
No, come on. No, the Supreme Court did not give blanket immunity to everything that a president does. I mean,
how can you say that? Because Trump's team, listen, I'm not an attorney. Andrea, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Trump's team did not even ask for immunity from anything that didn't have to do with the presidency. They didn't even ask for the part where all of a sudden the SCOTUS parses and says, well, but things that are not official acts, that wasn't even part of their ask. Because they're going to say that everything that he did, just simply because he was the president, means that he was doing it in an official capacity. That's an easy argument to make, I would think, and one that a jury
we're going to find out.
May not.
We're going to find
understand.
out. We're going to find out. We're going to find out really soon when Tanya Chutkin does, in fact, conduct this evidentiary hearing. And I think it's going to come out that what Donald Trump did was not in the normal course of his official duties.
So I agree with that, Richard. I think Don, what you're asking is almost did the Supreme Court go for a worse like outcome than what Trump and company were asking for, right? Because the Trump legal theory was if he wasn't impeached, he can't then be prosecuted. And I think you're right that SCOTUS did a couple things with this opinion. And one of the things that they did was create this category of core functions where the president is always immune. And I think what they did there is hugely, hugely dangerous because they basically said, if it's DOJ, it's core and the president always has immunity. So yes, this is going to be kicked down now to Judge Chutkan, and all the conversations presumably that Trump had with acting Attorney General Rod Rosenberg and, threatening to fire him, find a conspiracy for me, that's all part of his official actions. That I think is a hugely dangerous precedent. Then I think Richard's also right that a bunch of the other stuff he did leading up to January 6th, tweeting, intimidating Mike Pence, giving the speech, right? That's not going to be, I expect, part of the official duties. So a lot of the indictment still stands. But what the Supreme Court has done that's a huge win for him is A, the delay, and B, this horrible precedent that when the president is doing it with DOJ, any conversation is classified and entitled to immunity. That's a horrible precedent.
Mm-hmm.
But I have some good news. Do you know who controls the Supreme Court? It's not the president. It is Congress under the Constitution. And if we elected a few more Democrats who had guts to do a judicial reform bill in the House, and a few more senators, Democratic senators, who would be willing to create a carve out against.
That's not going to happen if you have a president who loses. I'm just saying. Go ahead.
But it's you're mixing it up. It's chicken and the egg, Don. And if we elect, so if people knew that we are literally 6 elected Democrats away from completely either expanding or dramatically reforming the Supreme Court and kicking Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito off the court very soon, that would, I believe, increase their desire to go and vote for an 81-year-old man who had a really bad debate last Thursday night.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for shaking your head, Andrea.
No, I agree. Congress has these tools to check the court. They're just rusty.
And people are timid. Democrats need to go on offense. They need to have the guts and the balls that Republicans do to go after what they want and what the American people want. And that, I think, is the biggest hit on Democratic politicians, is that they're not nasty enough. They're not proactive and vicious enough when they need
they keep
to be.
playing by the rules, and Republicans don't play by the rules. They play to win.
So yeah, right. When they go low, we go high. No, that formula doesn't work right now.
Can Joe Biden end this though by saying, "Look, I'm doing this. I'm getting rid of this guy." The Supreme Court ruled, and if they rule that I could whatever, I'm just acting on what the Supreme Court said, and so thereby I'm declaring Donald Trump ineligible to run for president.
I don't think so, Andrea.
So I think I think you've got the legal hypothetical question perfectly right. Maybe this is something I have to ask my terrified constitutional law students next year. I think that the Supreme Court did give the executive branch the green light to politicize everything that falls within their core functions. Prosecutors, the military, right? Inspector generals, whistleblowers, it's a mess. I don't know if we're at that kind of existential, I think right now we're talking about whether Joe Biden is going to stay in the race. Then whether President Joe Biden needs to abuse the tools of office the way the Supreme Court gave him.
Well, he wouldn't be abusing. He would be doing what was in his purview. Remember what Nixon said, if the president does it, then it's not illegal.
Yeah, and I think they basically agreed on Monday.
But Don, it's a bit of a catch-22 because let's say Biden grows some enormous amount of courage. He decides to be Trumpian. He says, I've been given this gift by the Republican Supreme Court. I'm going to disqualify Donald Trump. Ultimately, it would go back up on appeal to the Supreme Court, and they could say, no, that's not exactly what we meant.
Yeah. Okay, then perfect. Don't you think that would be a smart thing to do? Because then they'd have to reassess their own ruling.
I'm all for being gutsy and pushing the envelope in situations like this. So yeah, so let's send him this clip and Joe Biden and see if we can convince him. I'm sure your opinion carries a lot of weight with him, John. So let's do that.
Listen, I just said this is an unusual place for us to be in, and it is completely obvious that, from everyone I've spoken to, that the Supreme Court acted within the interest of the former president and not within the bounds of what the Constitution says and what they should be doing as jurists. Okay, so that's, number one. Number two, I sound like Joe Biden. Number two, I don't know what's going to happen between now and a couple of hours, a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a couple of months. Who's going to be the nominee? Who's not going to be the nominee? We're on unprecedented times, and I think we just have to hold on. As they say, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be interesting. I had said, I'm not sure if Donald Trump is going to be the nominee, that some of these court cases may end up knocking him out, and it's the exact opposite of what's happening. This could end up knocking Joe Biden out. Donald Trump has the luck of the devil, don't you think?
Well, I would go one step further. I've always called him the Orange Antichrist.
I'm not calling him. I'm just saying the luck of the devil. That's a saying. You've heard that saying.
Well, hold on. Remember the movie Damn Yankees? Donald Trump is the only president who has not aged, having served in the White House. And
he's aged. Look at pictures. He has aged.
But not as much. Given his diet, come on.
I thought that until I looked at some video and I looked at some old interviews that I did with him. He has aged, but he does not present as old as Joe Biden.
He's made a deal with the devil. So
you think so? Andrea?
Think so.
I think his brain is turning to mush if we're while we're on the subject of octogenarian presidents. I mean, I think it was Jon Stewart who might have put a montage together of recent Trump campaign events. I mean, he's not lucid, but to the point about his luck, I think he has the sort of good fortune of always speaking off script and never having to, be accountable to fact checkers. So it's maybe not as obvious.
Yeah. Andrea, Richard, you're the best. I wish we could predict what would happen, but we don't know. So
no, but Don,
isn't life grand?
Don,
go on.
This is so exciting. We all have wanted, because we're all political animals, we've wanted the country to be engaged in politics in the election. And now it's a little like a reality show, and it's actually kind of exciting. And if, in fact, there is a question of who's going to be the Democratic nominee and therefore potentially the president, the convention in Chicago is going to have the highest ratings it's ever had in the modern times. And I actually think there's a silver lining there. I think it's good for politics, for people to feel like they have some skin in the game and it's not predetermined by the establishment or the whatever deep state. This is raw, authentic politics, and I love it.
I don't disagree with you. And I think that if there is a broker convention, if the convention is as interesting as you say it will be, and I think it might be, I think that this actually helps the Democrats because more people will be engaged, more people will watch. I think younger people, let's just say that it's not Joe Biden, President Biden. If it's not him, younger people may be more engaged. He won't have the issue. They won't have the issue of Gaza and Israel. They won't have that baggage. They won't have other baggage that goes along with running for president. But they won't have the name recognition. But they could somehow run on the Democrats and the Biden administration's accomplishment. So I actually think it might help Democrats if it turns out that Joe Biden decides to step out. That's all I'm saying.
And I love that we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
It's
okay.
It's engaging. Anyway, you're great.
My
Don.
dog wants me to get up and go have fun with him, so I am going to go do that. And thank you both.
Congratulations again on your wedding.
Thank you very much, and keep enjoying this wonderful, wonderful 4th of July weekend where we're celebrating America and we're talking about the possibilities of everything in the future. So make sure you guys watching, make sure you hit the thumbs up. Make sure you hit the like button, hit those thumbs up. It helps the algorithm. And I appreciate my guests, Andrea Katz and Richard Greene. And we'll see you next time on The Don Lemon Show. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching The Don Lemon Show. Make sure you click on the image in the top right to subscribe to my channel and the thumbnail in the bottom right to watch more content from my show. And I'll see you next time.